Hello everyone, Taki here. In front of me I have the Retroid Pocket2 PCB, and this is something that I've been very excited about for a long time because this has never happened in this market before. The Retroid Pocket2 PCB is an upgrade for the original Retroid Pocket 2 that expands the functionality greatly, and depending on the package that you buy, also adds a touchscreen. I don't have any idea of the packaging that this is going to come in or what's going to be included, but it should have everything that you need, including a screwdriver and a prying tool to get the case off. You can see that I have a Retroid Pocket2 PCB here, along with an acrylic case to hold the old PCB when you're done. It also has a battery adapter so that this can be a console on its own. The screws for this are off camera right now, and I'll show them later when we put the old PCB inside this acrylic case. To get started with this upgrade, you are obviously going to need your Retroid Pocket 2, and in this video I'm only going to be upgrading the PCB. I won't be doing a screen swap to the touchscreen in this video. I will be doing that later on when the touchscreen is completely ready. The first thing that you want to do before getting started with this is make sure that your original Retroid Pocket 2 has battery charge, so that way you can see if your upgrade was done successfully. Mine actually does, so I'm going to move on to the next step, which is powering off the board. Hold power button, press A, power off the console. When you're doing this upgrade, you want to make sure that you don't scratch your screen, so it's a good idea to put down a microfiber cloth if you have one, or a t-shirt or anything, just to lay the screen down so it doesn't get scratched. Now that we have that done, the first thing that we can do is take off this right thumbstick and set it aside. Then we're going to flip our device over to the back. And the first thing that we have to deal with are these 4 stoppers. These can be a little annoying to deal with, but you just want to get in there and pry it up a little bit so that we can get it out with your fingers, or if you have a set of pliers, you can also use those to make the whole situation a lot easier. You can set those aside. I actually don't like those, so I don't think that I'll be putting those back in after this is done. It just makes it a lot easier to not have to deal with them. And they're purely cosmetic. Here's a good example. You can see this one is almost already up. So if I get in there on the angle, I can put some pressure on the corner and fork it out a little bit, and then I can get the rest out with my fingers and pull it out. Now that we're done with that, our next step is to take out these 4 screws. So I'm going to quickly do that. Set those screws aside next to your stoppers. And now we're ready for the next step. Your package should come with a guitar pick. Again, this isn't the retail package for me. This is a developer unit, so I'm going to just use this pry tool that I already had. Now, I wouldn't worry too much if you break these clips, because they really only have one use in them anyways. And even if you're very gentle, this thing's probably not going to survive, but they don't really matter anyways because the screws can hold this thing together evenly. But when you go through, there's a clip here, there's a clip here. Those 2 are going to be very hard to get, and they will probably break. Once you get past this point, you're going to swing around to the headphone jack, and by the time you get to this clip right here, you are probably going to be able to get the entire thing open. Once you have that done, you're going to see that the battery connector has a screw behind it. I actually didn't know that that screw was there on the retail units until just now. I thought that was removed. But you're going to have to just strategically get the battery connector out, and you should be all good. Now we're going to set that aside. Okay, I'm going to talk about some of the important parts of this teardown. We have 2 speakers that we have to take off, an antenna, an LCD ribbon cable, and an analog stick ribbon cable. You can do this in any order that you want, but this is just the way that I usually do it. I'm going to start off by taking out the speakers. This should come off very easily. You can set those aside. And for the LCD cable, you should use your guitar pick or a fingernail, lift up the flap, and then push the ribbon cable out. It should stick up. We're going to do the same thing for the analog stick, but for this one, you probably need a tool to get in there and just scoop it out. Once that's done, we're just going to do clockwise, taking off all of the screws to be able to take out this PCB. Once all the screws are out, you can just pry up the board and take it out and set it aside for now. At this point, we're ready to install our new PCB inside the old shell. And the first thing that we're going to do is take the analog stick from the shell, and we're going to install this before we go through the next part. Take the analog stick and feed it through the bottom, and then you're going to feed it into the connector. This is much easier to do when you're not on camera. Now, we're going to move on to the next part. We're going to get this ribbon cable through this hole, and we're going to insert the board like this. With our left hand, we're going to hold the antenna and the rubber flap off to the side, and we're going to insert our board, headphone jack in first, and then the ribbon cable is going to go over from the top. Now, you need to rotate the device like this, push up, and everything should go into place. I'm just going to explain why I did that. On the top of the device, you have these 3 buttons. If you don't tilt the board back like this will fall forward and you won't be able to push the PCB all the way down. So you do want to do that rocking motion where you go in this way, then tilt it back, push this into place, and then push the PCB down. The analog stick should fall into place. Now we're going to put this down and move on to the next step. Before putting in any screws, we're going to connect the ribbon cable for the LCD, and then we're going to connect the battery to make sure that everything works. If everything does work, we're going to disconnect the battery, and then we're going to assemble the rest of the device and then put it together completely. So you're going to take your ribbon cable and gently get it to go into place. You can see I just got it right there. Push gently from the back to make sure that it is completely in, and then close it. As long as your ribbon cable looks like this should be completely in place. Now we're going to take that battery that we set aside earlier, and we are going to connect it. So take it, push the connector in, push the connector completely in. We're going to take it. We're going to put some pressure here so that way these buttons can't come off, and we're going to press the power button to turn it on. You should feel a vibration from the motor, and then you can turn it over to make sure that the screen works. And we should see the boot animation if we've done this correctly. After you've put the ribbon cable in and the PCB is closed, you want to make sure that the buttons are also working correctly. So you want to press all of them, make sure that they feel exactly like they did before. If they don't, you need to fix the rubber that's underneath this. It probably moved out of place. So I'll show you what that looks like now. You can see here this rubber piece came off of its housing. I need to bring that back into place. You can see it's back in place now. Then you can hold it like this, test the buttons on the back. It should be perfectly fine. Check the D-pad too. And you're good to go. That should be the only issue that you'll get with this. Now we're going to open it up again, disconnect the battery, and now we're going to start assembling the device clockwise. And we're going to start off first with the shoulder button on the right side. This is going to allow us to put the device down on the right side and not have the analog poke up. We're going to get the L1 and L2 assembly and just put it in place. You might run into a problem where this button doesn't go in all the way, and it's probably going to be from this rubber piece. You just need to push it in and it should go where it needs to be. Now this is the first real thing that you want to pay attention to when you're putting this back together. These screw holes all have limited uses of being able to be taken apart, and the device that you're looking at right now has actually been opened 5 times at this point. So there's a really good technique that you can use to protect the holes. What you're going to do is you're going to put the screw in place. Now you could just tighten this right up and there's no problem if you never intend on opening this. My original device from last year in the summer has been opened about 15 times and the screw holes are completely gone after that many times, but you can do stuff to mitigate. What you're going to do is you're going to go backwards in the hole until you hear a click. Then you're going to start going to the right. Okay, there's the click. Then I'm going to start tightening. It's going to make it so that way I don't make any new threads and I can protect the threads that are already there and I won't strip them. We're going to do the exact same thing on the right side. Okay, after you got them in a little bit, you want to go and check the shoulder buttons. Sometimes they can be a little bit wonky. You want to check the feeling of L1. Don't worry if it's a little loose now. We're going to do the rest in the perimeter and then we'll go back and finish those after. Okay, at this point I've done all of my screws. Now I'm going to start putting together the other components, starting with the left side speaker. And the right side, but this is actually the left when it's flipped around. Okay, then we're going to do the antenna. And you shouldn't have any problems with this antenna, but I would just be very careful. Don't apply too much pressure if it's not going in. This should just click into place with no effort. If it's not, you're probably going to break it if you apply too much force. So take your time. I'm going to line it up and it clicks right into place. That's exactly how it should be if it's in the right way. And there's one more screw here. I'm not going to put that screw in because it's pointless and it makes it more difficult to service this device if I ever need to again. There's one more thing that I do want to point out before I close this up. The rumble motor is on the far left side and it'll rub against your hand. If you want to have a more uniform rumble, the only real good place to put this is right in this area here. It's not directly in the center, obviously, because the processor is there, but it's pretty close, and it is a lot better than having it just on the edge, in my opinion. So you can move this. It has some adhesive on the bottom, but it's reusable, so you can just get some slight leverage. Should pop up, and I'm going to move it. I'm going to move it right there. So that way it's not against the wall and it'll feel better. Before you completely close up the device, make sure you are okay with the feeling of the shoulder buttons. My left shoulder buttons are a little bit too loose, so I'm going to tighten those up. Don't overdo it because these ones are really easy to strip. Okay. Then we're going to connect the battery. Should be very easy because the screw's not there. Take the device, close it. Check one more time to make sure it can power on. And tighten the rest of the screws. Just one more thing to be aware of. If you do break the clips when you're taking this off, it won't get a very tight fit in the corners on the edges, like you can see now. But it really doesn't matter to me because this isn't going to go anywhere with the 2 screws on the side. Just something to be aware of. Put the analog hat back on. And enjoy the device. The final thing that we have to do is put the old PCB inside the new acrylic case. I'm not going to give directions on this. I'm just going to do it and speed up the footage because this is pretty straightforward, and this should come with a diagram to show you exactly where all of the screws go.